The grand concert hall sat in its midnight silence, rows of velvet seats sleeping beneath the golden chandeliers. The echo of past ovations clung to the red drapes like ghosts refusing to leave. Far below the stage, a mop glided across the polished wooden floor, steady and soft, like a bow across strings. The janitor, late 50s, wore faded coveralls with a patch that once had a name, but had since frayed into unreadable threads. He hummed. It wasn't careless. It wasn't loud. It was careful, like a man whispering to someone he used to know. A low, rich baritone filled the air, curling up into the balcony rafters like warm smoke. His voice held no training, but it had weight, like it had seen things and carried them gently. The mop paused. He looked up to the ceiling, closed his eyes. Then he sang the next line, not in words, but in emotion. A melody without lyrics, just aching. The chandeliers caught the light from the exit sign and shimmered, as if the music had stirred them awake. He twirled the mop in rhythm, and the floor gleamed as if grateful. No audience, no applause, just a man, a melody, and a job that paid just enough to survive but never enough to dream. From high above, behind the curtain-lined balcony, a pair of eyes blinked in the darkness. A man stood alone, barely breathing. He wasn't a janitor. He wasn't supposed to be here this late. But something about that voice. He leaned forward, the shadows hugging his outline like a secret. And down below, the janitor sang on. The hidden figure slowly raises a phone and hits record. The mop bucket rolled to a stop as the last note faded. Only the soft squeak of his boots echoed now. He leaned the handle against the wall, catching his breath like a man who just emptied something heavy from his chest. He whispered to himself, "Still hits the same, huh?" His voice cracked as he said it. Half laugh, half ache. He sat on the edge of the stage, pulling a crumpled rag from his pocket to wipe his hands. The spotlight from a broken fixture above flickered once, casting him in a halo that didn't belong to him. Narration. There was a time his nights didn't smell like bleach. A time when songs came with laughter, not loneliness. His hand brushed the mop handle, and suddenly, the hall around him faded into memory. Flashback scene. A younger version of him stood in a tiny living room. A girl, maybe 12, danced barefoot on the rug, holding a hairbrush like a microphone. He clapped off beat, singing along while she twirled. Daughter, laughing. "You're flat again, Dad." Him, "That's called style, sweetheart." The room glowed, until a knock at the door broke the moment. The landlord, the unpaid rent, the argument, and then the silence that never quite left. Back to present. The janitor blinked. The echo of her laughter still caught in his ears. He whispered, "You'd be grown by now." He stood again, humming under his breath, a tune stitched together from the ghosts of lullabies. His reflection shimmered faintly on the polished floor. One man divided between the man he was and the father he failed to stay. From across the dark aisle, behind the velvet curtain, a faint red light blinked. A camera lens, recording, silently. The red light fades to black as his voice carries on, soft but unbroken. The next morning, light spilled through cracked blinds in a one-bedroom apartment that had forgotten how to feel alive. A kettle hissed on a chipped stove. The sink dripped. The clock ticked, though a second too slow. On the small kitchen table sat a single bowl, spoon beside it, untouched. Across from it, an empty seat waited. Still, as if time had frozen there on purpose. The janitor, Henry, folded a paper towel with unusual care. He slid it beneath the bowl like someone might actually show up to eat. He didn't sit. He never sat at the table anymore. He poured coffee into a chipped mug that read, "Sure one, Dad." The handle was cracked, but he held it like it was holy. Internal monologue. If she walked in today, would she still call me that? Would she recognize this version of me? His eyes drifted to a record player in the corner, dusty, unused. Vinyls stacked beside it. Jazz, Motown, gospel. One record lay out of place, the sleeve torn. A father-daughter duet from a forgotten decade. Their favorite. He reached out, paused, and pulled back. Instead, he walked to the small bookshelf beside the couch, where a photo sat beneath a crooked lamp, a girl with curly hair and a grin that could undo storms, his arm around her shoulders, both smiling. Unaware, pinned behind the frame was a post-it note in her handwriting. "Don't forget to sing today, even if no one's listening." He touched the edge of the frame and whispered, "I never forgot." Cut 2. In another room, another city, a woman sat in a rehab dorm bunk, headphones in. Tears slipped silently down her cheek as a voice hummed through her earbuds. She didn't need lyrics. She knew that voice. She pauses the song and whispers, "Dad?" Inside the high-rise studio tower 2 blocks from the concert hall, the control room was bathed in low blue light. LED meters blinked in quiet rhythm, reflecting off black glass and soundproof walls lined with gold plaques. The man sitting at the center console was still, gray hoodie pulled over his head, hands folded under his chin, eyes locked on a waveform moving across the screen. No music playing, just the memory of it. His name was Micah Vale, once a giant in the industry, now a recluse in his own empire, a producer who hadn't signed anyone in a decade, not since his protege overdosed live on tour. He leaned forward and clicked the spacebar. The room filled with the janitor's voice. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. But God, it was human. Micah's fingers hovered over the mixing board but didn't touch a thing. He closed his eyes, just listened. The voice wrapped itself around the silence, bending but never breaking. It climbed, faltered, then rose again with aching grace, like someone climbing out of something heavy. "Micah," softly. "That's what pain sounds like. Real pain." He replayed it. Again and again. On the 4th listen, he finally moved. He opened a side drawer, pulling out a notebook labeled Ghosts. Inside, blank pages stared back. He wrote, "Midnight vocal, untrained, raw, truthful." He scribbled a question beneath it. "Who is he?" Micah stood and pulled his coat over his hoodie. As he walked out of the booth, he turned to the security guard at the front desk. "Micah." "Hey, who's been cleaning the hall at night?" The guard blinked. "Some guy from facilities. Quiet, keeps to himself." Micah nodded slowly. "Get me his name." The guard picks up the radio. Micah's eyes remain locked on the studio screen, where the waveform still moves like a heartbeat. The security office was cramped and smelled faintly of old coffee and static. Monitors lined the wall, each one showing an angle of the building. Empty hallways, locked studios, elevators resting like sleeping giants. Micah leaned against the counter, hood down now, his sharp features exposed beneath fluorescent light. He pointed at one of the screens. "Micah. Rewind that one. Studio lobby. Last night, around midnight." The guard clicked and dragged the timeline. Static. Then, there he was. On the screen. Henry, mop in hand, pushing a yellow bucket across marble tile. He was humming. The audio didn't carry, but Micah didn't need it to. He knew the rhythm now. Micah. "That's him. That's the voice." The guard scratched his chin. "Huh, that guy's been around a while. Doesn't talk much. Always wears that busted badge." Micah narrowed his eyes. "Micah. What's his name?" The guard zoomed in on the badge. The lettering had faded. Half the name tag was unreadable. Just a first initial, maybe a last name. But time and sweat had rubbed the truth clean off. Guard. "Could be Henry. Harwin. Harden? Something like that. HR might have a file. But he's just janitorial." That word hung heavy in the air. Just janitorial. Micah didn't blink. He turned, pulled out his phone, and dialed Micah into phone. "Ava, it's me. Drop what you're doing. I need a full facilities roster. Cross-check late shift custodians from the concert hall." Ava, over phone. "Okay. What am I looking for?" Micah stared at the paused image on the screen. Henry stood mid-step, mop in motion, head slightly bowed. He looked like a man carrying the weight of more than just a night shift. "Micah," quietly. Find the man no one sees. On the screen, Henry turns his head slightly, almost toward the camera, but not enough to be known. The door creaked open to a modest apartment on the third floor. Peeling paint, one working bulb in the hallway, and the distant hum of someone else's TV bleeding through the walls. Henry entered, keys jingling, and closed the door behind him with a sigh that sounded older than he was. He hung his jacket on the same rusty nail, turned the deadbolt, kicked off his boots, and then moved like clockwork. Pan on. A small table set for two mismatched plates, 2 chipped mugs, 1 fork slightly bent at the tip. He placed a box of macaroni on the counter and filled a pot. His back was straight, every motion quiet, deliberate, like a man performing a ritual, not for nourishment, but for memory. As the water boiled, he reached into a drawer and pulled out a folded napkin, pink, with little strawberries printed on the corner. He placed it by the second plate. Flashback begins, soft and hazy. A younger Henry sits at the same table, his daughter across from him, maybe 9 or 10, giggling as she dramatically adds ketchup to her mac and cheese. Daughter: mac and ketchup is gourmet. Dad: Henry, smiling: you'll be a food critic someday. Daughter: or a singer, or both. You'll clap for me, right? Henry: always. Back to present. He sets the plate down across from him, still steaming, but the chair remains empty. Henry doesn't eat. He just stares at the plate across the table like it might speak first. His gaze lifts to the bookshelf, to the framed photo of her, the one where her hair's caught in the wind, and her eyes are wild with laughter. He picks it up gently. Behind it, something's taped to the back, yellowed from time. A small folded letter. He turns it over. The corner reads, "For when you're ready to find me." Micah Vale stood alone in Studio A, where platinum records were once born, and now the silence felt like judgment. He adjusted a mic stand out of habit. No one was coming. No one had come in months. The control room lights blinked, patient and unused. He stared at the framed photograph near the door. Him and his late protégé, arms slung around each other, faces caught in the shine of a rising sun. She'd overdosed 3 days after that shot was taken. He hadn't touched that room since. Narration, internal voice. Labels called me a ghost maker. I don't find voices anymore. I bury them in reverb. Micah sat at the piano, untuned from neglect, and played a broken chord. The sound fell flat. He didn't try again. His assistant's voice crackled from the intercom. Another audition in 5. He closed his eyes. Flashback montage. A parade of hollow singers, each more polished, more practiced, less real, auto-tuned vocals, forced pain, fame chasers with nothing in their eyes. Each left behind a scent of desperation. Micah leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Micah, to himself. Another voice that thinks heartbreak can be rehearsed. He swiveled to the screen, replayed the janitor's humming from the hallway tape again. Untrained, frayed, flawed. But when that note cracked, when it broke open. Micah exhaled. Micah, quietly. That janitor has something raw I haven't heard since. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. He clicked the file, renamed it. Uncut Mercy, Draft 1. As the waveform pulses across the screen, Micah presses loop. The janitor's voice fills the studio again. And this time, Micah listens like it's the first time he's heard anything in years. The HR office was too bright. Fluorescent lights humming like nervous thoughts. Stacks of papers. A humming desktop printer. The kind of place built for policy, not people. Micah's assistant, Ava, stood across from a tired-looking HR clerk. Her tablet glowed with a pulled-up staff roster. Ava. Concert hall night shift. Janitorial. We're looking for a guy. Older, works late. Might be named Henry, possibly Harden or Harwin. The clerk clicked slowly, scrolling through columns that looked more like inventory than human names. Clerk, Bored. We contract those shifts out. Third-party vendor. Temp system. Could be a floater. Ava. Can you cross-check the video timestamps with badge swipes? Clerk. Not really. Half the badges don't scan right. Most just clock in manually at the loading dock. She clicked again. Frowned. Clerk. There's a HL from the previous week, but no file photo, no address, no emergency contact. That's strange. Ava leaned closer. Voice low. Ava. Are you saying there's no record of who he actually is? Clerk, after a pause. I'm saying whoever he is, he doesn't exist in our system. The printer behind them suddenly whirred to life, spitting out a paper, an old shift report with handwriting at the bottom. Voice in Hall A again. Same guy, sounds like church. Security note, unsigned. Ava slowly picked it up, staring at the handwriting. Micah's voice came through her earpiece. Micah, firm. Tell me something useful. Ava hesitated. Ava. Micah, we may have found the voice, but not the man. Ava looks at the grainy printout of a security camera still. The janitor's face is blurred, but the mop is perfectly in focus. The concert hall lay in silence again. Another late night. Another echo chamber for memories no one asked to remember. Henry pushed the mop slowly across the back aisle, careful not to disturb the sleeping Velvet. A bucket creaked behind him. His hum returned, soft at first, barely a whisper, but then it rose. Something old, something sad. A hymn he half remembered from childhood. No lyrics, just ache. But this time, it wasn't just air that caught the notes. Hidden 3 rows deep in the dark, Micah sat crouched behind the lighting control booth. A compact mic rested in his palm, red light blinking. He didn't move, didn't breathe, just recorded. Each note carried through the chamber, untouched by stage or spotlight, soaked in rawness and dust. Henry's voice cracked near the bridge, emotion catching like a skipped heartbeat. Micah leaned forward. Narration. You can fake vibrato. You can't fake pain. Henry turned slightly as if sensing something, but the hall remained empty in his eyes. He kept humming. Micah clicked the stop button. No edits, no filters, no takes. He had it. Back at the studio that night, Micah sat alone, headphones on. Looping the file over and over, he stared at the computer screen, then opened an anonymous burner account. No photo, no name. Just one word. Uncut Mercy. He dragged the file in, labeled it Midnight Hall Session, and clicked Upload. He didn't promote it, didn't tag it, just released it, like tossing a message into a stormy ocean. And then he waited. 30 minutes later, the view counter ticked upward. Slowly, then faster. Then a comment appears. Who is this voice? I've never felt something like this. The city blinked awake under street lamps and scrolling screens. Somewhere between midnight and dawn, Midnight Hall Session slipped past algorithms and landed in someone's headphones. Then another, and another. Montage. A barista in Brooklyn pauses mid-shift, tears in her eyes. A trucker on an empty highway taps the steering wheel, singing along without knowing why. A teenager in Manila posts the clip with the caption, "This song feels like someone held my heart, then let go." At 1:07 a.m., it had 147 plays. At 2:34, it hit 6,800. By 4 a.m., over $50,000, Micah stared at the growing numbers on his dashboard. He hadn't attached his name. He hadn't needed to. The voice was doing the work. Comment sections lit up like fireflies. I can't stop crying. Who is this? Sounds like my father used to, before he left. There's blood in this voice. This ain't auto-tune. This is life. Micah clicked one open. Sounds like someone mopping paint off a church floor. He froze. Exactly. Every time Henry's voice cracked, the comments got louder. Not critical, awed. He didn't want to admit it, but it scared him. This kind of raw couldn't be owned, couldn't be packaged. And yet, He refreshed again. 62,000 plays. The industry noticed. Music blogs started sharing it. TikToks exploded with edits of people just listening to it in silence. No filters, no makeup. Just faces. Feeling. Trending topic. The ghost vocals. Midnight Mercy. Micah leaned back in his chair, whispering to himself, "They're listening. And they don't even know who they're hearing." Ava rushes into the studio holding her phone. "Micah, we've got a problem. People want to see him." The music hall smelled of pine cleaner and old wood again. Henry wrung out his mop, the backbeat of his own humming bouncing faintly off marble columns. Same shift, same routine, same silence. Only this time, someone else was there. Footsteps echoed behind him. Expensive ones, not rubber soles or worn-out boots. Polished. Henry glanced up and spotted a young man in designer headphones and spotless shoes, iPad in one hand, curiosity in the other. Man, grinning. "Yo, you work here?" Henry nodded slowly, cautious. "Janitorial." Man, "You clean? And you sing, right?" Henry paused, grip tightening on the mop. "I hum." Man, stepping closer. "Nah, man, you sing. I heard it. Midnight Hall session. The track's viral. Half my feed's crying about it." Henry blinked. "What session?" Man, "Come on, you don't gotta play dumb. It's your voice. Everyone knows it." Henry stood still. A drop of bleach fell to the floor like punctuation. Henry, quietly. "I never gave anyone a voice." Man, tilting his head. "You saying it's not you?" Henry didn't answer. Man, serious now. "Then you got bigger problems. 'Cause if it is, someone's using your voice." Henry looked down at his gloves, frayed at the edges, soaked in water, dignity worn thin. He didn't know what was worse, being stolen from or finally being heard and not knowing how. The man turned to leave, already texting someone. Henry stared at the mop. The hallway felt different now, like the floor had been pulled from under him, but politely, quietly, without warning. Henry looks up toward the stage rafters, eyes narrowing. For the first time, he stops humming. The rehab dorm was dim, lit only by string lights someone had hung across the bunk bed rails. Elena, now 24, sat cross-legged on her narrow mattress, a tattered notebook open beside her. Headphones in, her eyes were closed. The melody played. A broken voice hummed, then rose, cracked on a note, but held it anyway. She froze, her fingers stopped writing. Crosscut, the track playing in both places, in her ears and in Henry's memory. In her mind, she was 7 again, twisting in circles on the apartment rug, holding a wooden spoon as a microphone. Her father, young, laughing, off-key, clapping along in the kitchen. Elena, childlike voice in memory. "Dad, you always miss the notes." Henry laughing. "They're just hiding from me." Her smile in that memory was wide enough to swallow the room, but here, now, her lips quivered. Her fingers gripped the edge of the mattress like she was holding on to air. Flashback ends. She sat up straight, scrubbed the track back to the beginning, played it again, and again. Tears slid down her cheeks, quiet, uninvited, unforgiving. She looked at the screen. No artist photo, no credits, just the name. Uncut Mercy, Midnight Hall. Session Elena, whispers. No one else sings like that. The roommate on the top bunk leaned over, earbuds dangling. Roommate, "Is that the one everyone's talking about?" "I cried all night." Elena didn't answer. Her voice barely rose above a breath. "Elena, Dad?" She pulled the earbuds out, opened her rehab drawer, and dug until she found a worn photograph. A little girl with her arms wrapped around a janitor's neck. The studio smelled like fresh paint and too much money. Everything glistened. Chrome edges, LED panels, glass tables no one touched. Henry stood by the door, arms crossed, boots tracking in dust. He didn't sit. Micah sat across from him, hands steepled on the desk. Between them, silence, tension. file folder with Henry's name freshly printed across the front, even though no one knew his last name yesterday. Micah, you probably know why you're here. Henry, quietly. I clean your halls. Micah, gently. You shook the internet. Henry didn't react. Micah. Over 100,000 people streamed a raw, unedited clip of you humming while you worked. No auto-tune, no filters, just you. Henry, still. I didn't give you that clip. Micah exhaled slowly. I didn't ask because I wanted to take. I asked because I want to give. He slid a paper across the table. A single-page contract, no numbers filled in yet. Micah, I want to record you properly. Studio time, rights, royalties. We do this your way. I believe in your voice. Henry didn't look at the paper. Henry? My voice ain't something you just catch and put on a leash. Micah leaned forward. Micah, it could help people. Could help you. You've got pain people feel, and you're hiding it in bleach buckets. Henry stepped back. Henry, you want my voice, but you don't know the man behind it. Micah opened his mouth, but Henry was already turning for the door. Micah, calling after him, then help me know him. Henry didn't look back. As the door shuts behind him, Micah sees the untouched contract left on the desk, with a smudge of bleach on the corner. The red recording light flickered. Studio A had been prepped for a full session. Levels checked, mic polished, cameras mounted discreetly. But no one had prepared for this. Henry stood just inside the booth. In his left hand, a worn microphone. In his right, his mop. Micah blinked behind the glass. Micah, softly into intercom. Henry, you don't need to do that here. Henry, calm. I sing with it in my hand. Or I don't sing at all. The room went still. He dipped the mop in the bucket, its water swirling like a storm barely holding shape, and placed it beside him. He wrapped his fingers around the pole like it was a grounding rod. Then, eyes closed, he sang. Poetic description. The note started low, buried beneath decades of dust. It climbed slow, dragging its bruises behind it, but refused to kneel. The studio watched as the man sang not into a mic, but into the ache of a life no one asked about. Each time his hand gripped the mop tighter, his voice grew warmer, like the two were stitched together now, labor and art, silence and story. Micah didn't speak, didn't touch the board, didn't dare break it. Narration. Some men raise their voice to take up space. Others, like Henry, raise it to let the pain breathe. When the final note trembled into silence, the mop leaned softly against the soundproof wall, still dripping. Micah wiped his face without realizing he was crying. Ava, whispering beside him. You can't bottle that. You just receive it. Micah nodded, and quietly, one tear slipped from his cheek onto the soundboard. That tear lands on the arm track button. The red light flashes back on, this time unprompted. The boardroom was everything the janitor's closet wasn't. Bright, modern, manicured. Walls lined with platinum records. Espresso bar untouched. Henry sat across from three suits. One of them, Mara, VP of Artist Relations, smiled with teeth that didn't match her eyes. Mara, we're offering full studio access, professional mastering, royalties, real career traction. Henry didn't answer. Micah stood near the window, arms crossed, watching how fast the music industry could sound like real estate sales. Mara, smiling wider. Now, just a small creative note. We think your sound is timeless, but marketing-wise, your look may not align with certain platforms. Henry raised an eyebrow. Henry, my look? Mara, gently. There's no need for a face, really. We could animate the visuals, create a brand identity. Mysterious, viral, like Sia, except, underground. Henry's hands folded slowly in his lap. Henry, you mean record my voice, sell my hurt, package my pain, but never show the man it came from? The room stiffened. Mara, trying to salvage. You could be legendary without ever being visible. Micah stepped in. Micah. He's not a product. Mara, snapping. He's a janitor with a gift. Don't romanticize this, Micah. We're offering him an out. Henry stood. Henry, quiet, cutting. You don't want me. You want the sound I made while pushing a mop through silence? No one replied. He looked down at the contract folder, his name printed in gold. Henry. So I can sing, but not be seen? Henry walks out without touching the folder. The suits murmur behind him. One says under their breath, "We'll just give the song to a face that sells." The beat was glossy now, overproduced, shiny. In Studio B, a rising pop star named Rico Ray bobbed his head behind the glass, one diamond earring catching the light as he lip-synced to a track that didn't belong to him. Behind him, a team of producers watched the waveform dance on screen, but the voice that filled the room, raw, aching, deep, wasn't Rico's. It was Henry's. Only processed, tuned, trimmed, dressed in drums it never asked for. Producer, smirking. He doesn't even need to record, just mime it. The soul's already baked in. Label exec. It's a hit. We'll call it Born from the Basement. Throw some mystery on it. Micah watched from the hallway, fists clenched, knuckles white. He hadn't approved this, but he knew. Once a label smells money, they move like wolves. Voiceover. Micah's inner monologue. I tried to protect him, but I brought him here. I opened the door and let them steal the house. Cut 2. In the rehab facility, Helena scrolled mindlessly through music videos, earbuds tangled in her lap. She paused. There, on screen, was Rico Ray staring into the camera. The caption, Voice of a Generation. Rico's new single drops tonight, but the second she heard the first note, her heart stopped. That wasn't Rico. That was him, her father's voice, dressed in another man's skin. She sat up, anger and heartbreak colliding in her throat. Elena whispers, What did they do to you? She grabs her phone and types an email with shaking hands. Subject line, That voice isn't yours. The maintenance closet smelled of lemon cleaner and metal, bare bulbs swinging overhead, pegboard lined with silent tools. Henry sat on the edge of a supply shelf, arms folded, eyes closed. He hadn't sung in 3 nights. He hadn't even hummed. He just mopped, silently. Until a knock on the steel door broke the pattern. A young receptionist stood there, nervous, holding a plain envelope. Receptionist, softly. This came for, well, we didn't know who to give it to, but someone said, maybe you'd know what it meant. She handed it over and left without waiting. Henry stared at the handwriting on the front. To the man who never stopped singing. Yes, no return address. His hands trembled as he opened it. Voiceover. Elena's letter. I heard your voice. Not the version they played on the radio. Not the one they gave away. I heard the real one. The one that broke on the 3rd note because you were too full to hold it in. I knew it was you, Dad. I don't know how you got here, or how I got lost. But if you're reading this, I'm listening now. I'm in a place that's helping me remember who I am. And I think you might be the only one who ever truly knew. Dad, I heard you. Please, find me. The paper trembled in his grip. Henry folded it like it was glass, placed it in his chest pocket, then pressed his palm over it. The kind of stillness that's heavier than grief. He reached for his mop, then stopped, looked at it, and left it behind as he walked out the door. The station platform moaned beneath Henry's boots. A half-lit sign flickered above. Eastbound, 6:45 a.m. The world was just beginning to glow gold at the edges. Henry gripped the letter in his coat pocket like it was a map and a lifeline in one. Flashback, quick cuts. And a teenage Elena slamming the apartment door. Her shaking hands holding a crumpled acceptance letter to music school. Henry shouting, then silent. And they, her suitcase rolling down the cracked steps. Him watching from the window, mop in hand. Back to present. The train hissed in. He stepped on without hesitation. Inside, the train was nearly empty. Morning papers folded on empty seats. Henry sat by the window watching the city blur into fields. His hands trembled, but his eyes were steady. Narration. I wasn't there when she left. I won't miss her again. The rhythm of the tracks matched the pace of his heart. He rehearsed what he'd say, then realized he had no words big enough to carry the apology, so he whispered the only truth he had. Henry, to himself. I kept singing. That's all I knew to do. The train pulled into the rehab center's town, a sleepy place, flowers growing through cracks in sidewalks. Henry stepped off, holding nothing but the letter in his chest pocket and the weight of years on his shoulders. He reached the front desk. The nurse looked up. Henry, I'm looking for Elena. Elena Haynes. The nurse blinked, checked a chart. Nurse, softly. She left yesterday. Cleared out early. Didn't leave forwarding. Henry stood there, silent. A gust of wind lifted the corner of the letter in his pocket. The nurse hesitated, then slid something across the counter. A folded paper napkin with 6 handwritten words. I hope you come anyway. E. Henry sat alone in the small rehab courtyard. Concrete bench, vines crawling up brick. A bird sang overhead, out of key. Felt right. The nurse returned, something small in her palm. Nurse. She left this in her room. Said if anyone ever came looking. She handed him a clear cassette tape. Old. Smudged. Labeled in blue pen. For Dad. Henry stared like it might dissolve in his fingers. He hadn't touched a cassette since lullabies and bedtime humming and... He stood. The nurse pointed toward the rec room. Inside, dust-covered chairs, faded posters, and a worn-out stereo system in the corner. He slid the tape in. Pressed play, crackling static. Then, her voice. Faint. Unsure. Elena, on tape. I don't know if you'll ever hear this, or if you even want to. Henry's breath catches. He leans forward. Elena, conted. But I've been thinking about your songs, the ones you used to hum when Mom left, the ones you thought I wasn't listening to. I was, a pause, a sniffle. Elena, you sang grief like it was gospel, and somehow it made me feel safe. Flashback. Her small hand on his shoulder as he stood in the kitchen, not knowing she'd been behind him the whole time. Elena, voice softening. If you're listening to this, it means I'm trying. It means I still remember who I was when I was yours. Henry, whispering aloud. You've always been mine. The tape whirred on, faint humming. Hers this time, not polished, not perfect, but trying. Henry presses the stop button. The tape clicks, loud in the silence. He lifts it to his lips, breath shaking, then stands. Henry stood in the middle of Studio A again, but this time, he wasn't holding his mop. He held her letter in one hand, and her tape in the other. Micah watched from the glass booth. No contracts, no pressure, just presence. Micah, softly. Why'd you come back? Henry, voice low. She left me something honest. A pause. I want to give her something back. Micah nodded once, said no more. He dimmed the lights, turned on the mic, and let the red glow of recording fill the room like firelight. Montage. Poetic, slow burning. Henry at the piano, fingers trembling, pressing chords like he's touching memories. His voice rough at first, then clearing with each note. Micah watching with headphones on, lips parted like he's afraid to breathe. Lyrics forming on scraps of paper beside a framed photo of Elena as a child. A guitar track layered in, then pulled back out, because it distracted from the ache. Henry rewrote the verses 3 times, but the chorus came instantly. I heard you once when I was gone. Now I'm singing so you'll know I'm still yours. His voice cracked on the word, yours. He kept it in. Micah leaned into the mic. Micah, what should I call the track? Henry looked up. Henry. Her name. Micah nodded. Micah, typing. Track 27. Elena. Micah hits export as the sound fades. On screen, the track name updates. Elena, for when you're ready to come home. The video wasn't flashy, just a static camera. One man, one mic. No stage, no edits, no mask. Henry sat on a stool in Studio A, Mop leaning in the corner behind him like a shadow that wouldn't leave. His voice began low, sincere, fragile, and then it climbed. Crosscut montage. A teenager in Tokyo posts a reaction clip, tears slipping beneath his hoodie. I feel like he's singing to someone who's gone, but still listening. A radio DJ in Atlanta pauses her show mid-track. DJ. Y'all, this ain't just a song. This is confession set to melody. A grandmother in Chicago writes in the comments, My son died 5 years ago, but this voice made me speak to him again tonight. TikTok explodes with hashtags. Lena song, the voice with no face. Janitor of hearts. At first, the numbers ticked slowly. Then the dam broke, 100,000 streams, 2 million in 48 hours. The thumbnail, just a tired man in overalls, became a symbol, an anthem of quiet men who had no stage. Until now. Cut to rehab dorm. Elena lay in bed, scrolling her feed. She stopped. There, his face. Not polished, not hidden. Just him. Caption. Meet the man behind the song that broke the internet. The track began. Her heart clenched. The room spun. Her roommate leaned down. Roommate, quietly. You okay? Elena's hand covered her mouth. Elena, barely a whisper. That's my dad. Her eyes flood. She presses play again. This time she doesn't cry. She sings along. The rehab dorm was still except for the soft sound of Elena's breath hitching between words. She sat cross-legged on the bed, hoodie pulled over her head, earbuds in, heart wide open. Her father's voice filled the space between her ribs. She wasn't a child again, but she felt like one. Flashback. Faint, dreamlike. Her tiny legs swinging off the edge of the kitchen counter. Her father stirring soup, humming softly behind her. The same melody, same rhythm, same crack in the middle where grief lived. Elena, age 8. Why do you hum when you cook? Henry. Because your mama left a silence behind and I gotta fill it. She didn't understand then. She did now. Back to present. Elena gripped her pillow as the chorus hit. Henry, recording. Come home through the song if you can't find the door. I'll leave the mic on. I'll sweep the floor. She pressed pause. Then play. Then pause again. Her voice cracked in the quiet. Elena, whispering. I thought you forgot me. She pulled out her phone, thumb trembling, opened the contact page, stared at the number she hadn't dialed in years. No, too soon. Instead, she opened a browser, searched. Who produced Elena? Ballad. Micah's name appeared in small print at the bottom. She copied the email, opened a blank message, typed slowly. That voice in the video. It's my father. Please don't let them change him. He doesn't know I heard him. Don't tell him I wrote this. Not yet. She hit send. The screen fades to black. Just the message sent confirmation, blinking like a heartbeat. The music hall was open for a midday tour. Sunlight spilling through stained glass windows, dust dancing in its beams like suspended time. Elena stepped inside, hood up, hands in her coat pockets. She didn't tell the staff who she was. Didn't need to. She wasn't here as a fan. She was here as a daughter trying to stand in the place her father had turned into a song. She stepped softly down the velvet-lined aisles, eyes scanning the stage, the mic, the floor, like she might see his footsteps carved into the polish. Cut to back entrance. Henry clocked in, late today, said nothing to the security guard, grabbed his mop. He had a job to do, just like always, but there was a new tension in his step, something alive in his eyes, like hope was trying to sit beside him again. Awkward, unfamiliar, cross-cut, both moving. Elena walked the rows slowly, running her fingers across the edge of each seat, stopped at the front, looked up to the rafters. At the same moment, Henry stepped through the backstage corridor, pushing his mop, whistling low. He paused, looked out onto the hall. But from behind the stage curtain, Elena turned, felt something, looked toward the wings, but the curtain was still. Henry leaned forward, then turned back. She exited through the main doors. He stepped onto the stage 5 seconds later. Empty. Narration. They were closer than they'd been in years, but neither of them knew it. A faint trace of her perfume lingers in the air. Henry breathes it in and hums without knowing why. Micah stormed into the executive boardroom, a printout clutched in his fist. Across the long glass table sat Mara, legs crossed, tablet glowing. She didn't even flinch. Micah. You replaced his credits. You stripped his name from the final cut. Mara, calm. We enhanced the release strategy. Micah. You erased the man who made the song matter. Mara, dry. We didn't erase him. We obscured him for market appeal. People love the mystery. They don't need a face mopping a floor. They want a story they can project onto. Micah threw the printout down. A promotional poster. Elena, Ballad, by Rico Ray. Tagline. Inspired by real heartbreak. No mention of Henry. Not a line. Micah, cold. He's not your aesthetic. Mara, shrugging. He's your ghost. That's what you wanted, right? Pain without the person. A voice without a life. Cut 2. Janitor's closet. Henry sat on the bench, radio playing faintly, until he heard it. His song, but not his voice. Not his name, just someone else's version of what he gave. His chest sank. He stood slowly, walked through the hallway like a man entering a war he never wanted. Cut 2. Studio lobby. Henry walked through the glass doors. Micah met him mid-hallway, shame already in his eyes. Henry, quiet but sharp. You gave them my pain, and they sold it with a filter. Micah. I'm trying to fix it. Henry. You needed me silent. Beat. I won't be. Henry walks past him, toward the studio, toward the mic. He's not asking anymore. The lights were dim in Studio A, only the soft red glow of the arm track button pulsing like a heartbeat. Henry stood in the recording booth again. No engineers, no execs. Just Micah. No mop this time, only his voice, and something he hadn't carried in years. Intention. Montage. Henry scribbling lyrics on the back of a supply invoice. Ripping tape from the console so he could sing without distraction. Sit-on. Micah unplugging the vocal filter. Boy. Henry closing his eyes, taking one breath like he's about to fall off a cliff, and singing anyway. The song didn't have a title. Didn't need one. It wasn't made for radio. It was made for her. Henry, in the booth softly. No one owns this voice but the girl who heard it first. No one holds these notes but the hand that once held mine. His voice faltered on the second verse. Micah moved to stop the take. Henry raised his hand. Don't let it crack. Let it show. This track wasn't for charts. It was for memory. For presence. When it ended, he stepped back from the mic. Didn't say a word. Micah hit stop. Didn't breathe. Henry, quietly as he picked up the headphones. This one? He looked toward the empty space where Elena once danced with a hairbrush mic in their living room. Henry, this one's just for her. Micah clicked Save As, File Name. Only she will know. Final take. The showcase room was quiet. Industry types in suits. Artists with frozen smiles. Critics, bloggers, playlist curators sipping cocktails in plastic cups. Micah stepped to the front. No hype, no introduction. Micah into mic. Not a single effect. No retakes. Just a man who never planned to be heard. He hit play. The track begins. A slow hush fell over the room. The first few notes wobbled. Raw. Unpolished. Then came the voice. Henry's voice. It trembled but didn't apologize. Visual montage. Slow camera pans. A tattooed producer lowers his drink and closes his eyes. A pop star's mascara begins to run. Ows? A blogger drops her phone, unable to type as the chorus hits. If you're out there and you're tired, I kept your seat warm with a song. No visuals accompanied the track. No face, no promo art, just the sound, and the truth riding inside it. Micah stood at the back now, watching. He wasn't the center of the room anymore. The voice was, and it was louder than anything money could have made. In the third row, a young woman with a hoodie and shaking shoulders sat completely still, until her chest caved. A single sob broke out. The people around her turned. But she didn't notice. Because she had stopped listening with her ears. She was listening with memory. It was Elena. She buried her face in her hands as the final lyric faded. The room stood and clapped. But she remained seated, whispering one word between sobs. Dad. Backstage. Quiet. Curtains drawn. A low hum beyond the velvet. The room waited. Expectant. Curious. Unknowing. Henry stood behind the wings, staring down at the floor he once mopped, now waxed to perfection. Micah stood beside him, eyes steady. Micah, softly. You don't have to do this. The song did enough. Henry shook his head. Henry. No. The voice made them listen. Beat. But now they need to see who they ignored. Cut 2. Main hall. Showcase encore. The host stepped on stage. Host, into mic. Before we wrap, we have one more moment. You've heard the song, now meet the soul. He stepped aside. Silence. Then, Henry walked out. No suit, no stylist, just him, wearing the same boots that once echoed through silent halls. The crowd murmured. Someone whispered, "That's the janitor." Another voice, "That's him?" He walked to the center mic, took a breath, didn't sing. He spoke. Henry, firm, clear. I didn't come here to impress you. I came here to find someone, but I had to let the world hear me first. He held up the folded letter from his pocket, the one labeled, "For when you're ready to find me." Henry, I wasn't just a background sound. I was a man, a father, a voice you walked past, gasps. A few stood. Elena, from the third row, froze. Henry, voice breaking slightly. I'm not just a voice. I'm a father. Elena stands slowly, tears in her eyes. Their gaze finally locks. Father and daughter, no longer ghosts. The showcase had ended. People trickled out, some in tears, some changed, all quiet. But in the green room behind the curtain, the silence was heavier. Micah sat alone at the dressing table, staring into the unlit mirror. His reflection didn't look back. It just waited. Henry stood in the doorway. Henry, you kept my name off the first upload. Micah didn't deny it. Micah, quietly. Yes, Henry. You made it anonymous. Let them build hype without ever knowing who I was. Micah looked up. His face was hollow, not from deceit, but from shame. Micah, I did. A pause. Then he spoke again. This time, voice cracking like the truth he'd never said out loud. Micah, I was afraid. Beat. I thought if they saw you first, they wouldn't hear you. Henry's jaw clenched. Micah conted. I've worked in this business 20 years, and I've seen what they do with voices like yours. They love the sound, but not the man holding it. Henry stepped inside, crossed the room, stopped inches away. Henry, you wanted the ache, without the age. Micah nodded. Micah, I thought the world wouldn't listen unless it was shiny. Filtered, packaged. He looked down at his hands. Micah, barely audible. I didn't believe in them. And I didn't believe they'd believe in you." Henry looked at him, saw not a man with power, but a man who'd forgotten how to hope. Henry. "But they did." Micah lifts his head slowly, eyes glassy. "They believed in you, Henry, before I did." A week passed. No press tour, no radio campaign, just one upload. No studio effects, no auto-tune, just Henry, a microphone and the mop leaned in the background, this time on purpose. The song, Mercy. No label tag, no writer credits except one. Henry L., cross-cut montage, digital reaction. On Spotify, Mercy hit 1 million streams in 2 days. On TikTok, duets appeared. Veterans, mothers, recovering addicts, all singing with him, not over him. Janitor, a viral post. This voice doesn't ask for sympathy. It gives you a place to rest. Reddit thread. The janitor made the industry look fake. Trending. Mercy. Just Henry. Janitor of Hearts. It was the first time in platform history a non-commercial, self-released track hit #1 on the acoustic chart in 14 countries. Cut 2, newsroom interview segment. Anchor, reading headline. A song named Mercy. Breaks records. Artist declines interviews, says only, "It was for someone who needed to hear it." Anchor, turns to co-host. They're calling him the father of feeling. Cut 2, online music. Blog graphic. Title, Who is the janitor who sings Mercy? Cover, Henry in silhouette. Mop in hand, mic in the other. Cut 2, Elena's apartment. She sits by a cracked window, sunlight warming her face. She watches the video again. This time she smiles. Not just because it's him, but because the world finally sees what she always heard. She whispers to herself, "They're hearing my father now," then grabs a train ticket off her desk. The train station pulsed with quiet movement. People rushing, people waiting, people leaving, people coming home. Elena stood still, a duffel bag slung over her shoulder, one foot on the yellow line, one thought on repeat. She held the printed headline in her hand, creased and worn. Janitor's voice heals the internet. Below it, his photo, half smile, eyes softer than she remembered. But her hands shook. Internal monologue. Soft. Scared. He found his voice again. He's not invisible anymore. And I left when he needed someone to listen. The PA system called her platform. She didn't move. Flashback, her memory. The night she packed her bags. Henry stood in the doorway, arms crossed, eyes tired. Henry, then, "Running won't fix the music inside you." Elena, angry. "Young? You don't know anything about my silence." She had slammed the door before he could answer. But now, years later, his song was all she heard. And it wasn't angry. It was open. It was waiting. Still, back to present. She looked down at the boarding pass, felt her stomach twist. Internal monologue continues. What if I come back and break him again? What if he's better without me? She stepped back from the edge. Train doors opened, steam hissed. She didn't move, just stood there, on the edge of return, on the edge of everything. She opens her phone, hovers over the Call Dad contact, but locks the screen instead. Henry sat at the small desk in his apartment. Same chipped mug beside him, same lamp, flickering faintly, but this time, there was no music. Just paper, and the decision to be honest. Voiceover, letter narration begins. Henry, writing, "To my daughter, whom I failed. I used to think silence protected you, that if I didn't let you see how much I was breaking, you wouldn't break too. But I realize now that silence builds walls, and music is what tears them down." Visuals while narration continues. Henry sitting at the piano, not playing, just thinking. Flash of young Elena asleep on the couch, his coat draped over her like a blanket. A photo of her still on his nightstand, taped, repaired, but never removed. Henry walking alone past posters of himself now, on buildings, buses, streaming screens, and ignoring them all. Henry, voiceover. You left because I made you feel unheard. But I kept singing, not for fame, for you. Every mop stroke carried a note I couldn't say out loud. Every chorus was a message I never mailed. This is the first one I'm sending. He looked up from the page, folded it, titled it in thick, shaking ink. To my daughter, whom I failed. Then he scanned it, posted it, publicly. Caption: Come home, or let me find you. Elena, scrolling from a train bench, sees the letter appear on her screen. Her hand covers her mouth, tears rise. And this time, she doesn't look away. Rain cracked against the city like a second heartbeat. Thunder rolled low over rooftops. Streetlights flickered like doubt. Elena stood under the awning across from the concert hall, her hood pulled up, soaked through anyway. Across the street, the building glowed like a memory. Marquee lights blinked. One night only, Henry L. Mercy live. She had told herself she wouldn't come, told herself she was too late, told herself too many things she didn't believe. But now, she was here, and every raindrop hitting her face felt like the past refusing to stay buried. Cut 2, inside the concert hall. Micah stood backstage. Henry tuned a simple acoustic guitar with fingers that had mopped more than they'd ever played. No spotlight, no fanfare, just truth. Micah, softly. You sure you want to start with the new one? Henry. It's not new. It's just finally ready. Cut back, outside. Elena crossed the street. Cars passed, her shoes soaked through. She paused at the doors, hand trembling as it reached for the handle. She took a breath. Not to steady herself, but to let go. Inside, house lights dim. The audience quieted. Henry stepped up to the mic. Outside, Elena pulled the door open. A gust of wind swept in with her, rain still clinging to her. She stepped inside. No one noticed her yet, but she saw him, and he began to play. The first chord echoes into the space as the doors slowly creak closed behind her. He hasn't seen her yet, but she's here. And this time, she's staying. Henry played with a kind of stillness that made the room hold its breath. A soft finger pick. A melody like memory. Lyrics meant for one heart in the crowd. He didn't know she was there. Not yet. Henry, singing low. I built a chair from empty halls and left a seat for you. Ah, I whispered through these silent songs, hoping you'd come through. Cut 2, Elena in the aisle. Rain still glistened on her sleeves. Her breathing stuttered as each word wrapped around her like home. She stepped down the side of the theater, hand grazing the wall like it might hold her up. Halfway down she stopped. His voice faltered. On stage, Henry looked up, just for a moment, and saw her. The chord broke. His voice did too. The audience shifted. Confused, but Henry stepped away from the mic, eyes never leaving hers, softly into the mic. I knew you'd hear me. Tears streamed down Elena's face. She shook her head, then walked forward. The crowd parted, quietly, respectfully. She stepped on stage, took the second mic, didn't say a word, and sang, Elena, soft, trembling. I never stopped hearing you. Even when I ran, their harmonies met like they'd never been apart. Not perfect, but perfectly real. Father and daughter, broken, but not lost. The music fades, but their hands stay linked at the mic, no longer melody and echo. Just one song, finally whole. The final note floated like a feather. Fragile, breath-warm, unscripted. Elena's voice cracked on the last word. Henry didn't fix it, didn't cover it. He just stood beside it, like a father finally learning not to clean what needs to be held. Their hands stayed clasped at center stage. 2 mics. 1 moment. and the crowd didn't move, didn't breathe. It was like the entire room had been waiting for something sacred, and now that it was here, no one dared disturb it. Cut to audience. Faces. A music critic wiping their eyes behind thick-rimmed glasses. A young man filming the moment, hands shaking too much to keep it still. A mother in the third row clutching her daughter's hand tighter. A man mouthing, "That's them," to no one in particular. Silence. Real silence, not absence of sound, but the kind that follows grace. Then, a single clap. From the back of the room, Micah. Standing, hands coming together slowly like he wasn't just applauding a performance, but repenting. The room followed. First row, second, all the way up to the rafters. The applause grew like rain. Not loud, but full. No cheering, no whistles, just clapping. Like a thank you. Like an apology. Henry lowered his mic. Elena leaned into his shoulder. Together they stood as if stitched by every note they'd ever buried. The spotlight lingers. On the side wall, Micah wipes his cheek and whispers through the clapping, "That was the realest thing I've ever heard." Backstage smelled like pine cleaner and nervous sweat. Old carpet. Rusted mirror. A mop leaned in the corner like an old friend watching quietly. Henry sat on a crate, palms shaking, wiping his forehead with a rag that still smelled like bleach. Elena stood beside him, still barefoot from her rain-slicked walk in. Neither spoke for a moment. Then, Micah appeared, suit rumpled, tie loose, eyes red. He held something small in his hand. A contract? A check? No. A mic, Micah, softly. "You don't have to mop floors anymore, Henry." Henry smiled. A soft, sideways kind of smile. "Henry, I never did it because I had to." Micah lowered the mic, confused. "Henry," looking at Mop. It was the only place I could still hear her voice echo. "You know, tiles don't judge you when you hum the wrong verse." Elena leaned into him gently. She knew what he meant now. He stood, picked up the mop with one hand, the mic with the other, balanced the two like they were equal weight. They weren't, but to him. They both held music. Micah, hesitant. "We have a car waiting outside." Henry, "I walked here. I'll roll my cart back the same way." Micah watched as Henry wheeled the mop bucket down the back hallway, Elena beside him, barefoot and smiling. The security guard at the exit nodded at Henry, then whistled the melody Henry used to hum while mopping. This time, Henry whistled back. The morning after. The mop bucket sat in the janitor's closet, still wet from the walk home. But outside the walls of the school, something much bigger had started dripping through cracks in the silence. Cut to radio studio. Local station, late morning. The red on-air sign glowed. Radio host, soft voice. "You're listening to WZVL Morning Soul, and what you heard last night at the Civic Hall, that was something else." He pressed play. A grainy clip of Elena's voice and Henry's low hum floated through. Radio host choked. "That man, that janitor, sang with more pain and beauty than most chart toppers I've spun this year." Cut to Facebook feed scrolling fast. A video of the performance had gone viral. 7,000 shares. Comments like, "Who is this man? This made me call my dad. Give this man a record deal, not a mop." Cut to inside a coffee shop. Two teens watched the clip on a phone. One of them wiped a tear and whispered, "I wish my dad had sung to me." Back at the radio station, the host leaned in. Radio host, "Funny thing is, I knew Henry. Back in '94, we shared a piano teacher. He had something then, and he sure as hell has it now." He clicked off the mic, sat in silence. Let the echo breathe. The station phone rings. Caller ID, Micah S. The host hesitates, then picks up. Micah didn't send a town car this time. He walked, hands in his coat pockets, shoes dusty from the morning dew. Outside the school, he waited near the dumpsters, where Henry always clocked in. When the doors opened and the scent of floor wax drifted out, Henry emerged, same old cart in tow. Micah. You still come early, huh? Henry, shrugging. Tiles don't clean themselves. They stood in silence. Micah broke it first. Micah, carefully. I want to offer you something. Properly this time. No shortcuts, no flash. He handed over a folder. Inside, a recording contract. Studio hours. Royalties split. Elena's name listed as co-creator. Henry, reading it. You really want a janitor's hum on a record label? Micah, sincere. No, I want your story. I want her voice. I want the ache and the dirt and the morning mop water. Because it made you real, and people are starving for real. Henry's eyes flicked toward the school's glass door. Inside, kids were already filing into classrooms, some waving at him through the pane. Henry, after a pause. You know what I want? Micah waited. Henry. Let's record in this building, this hallway, these acoustics. I want the echo of the janitor's closet on every track. Micah blinked. Micah. Seriously? Henry, grinning. If people love the mop man, then they get the mop floor too. Micah nods, then pulls out his phone and calls a sound engineer. Micah stood frozen in the school hallway, his sound engineer whispering, You sure about this echo? It's raw. Micah. That's the point. By noon, the school had transformed. Cables snaked around drinking fountains. A condenser mic dangled from the flagpole holder. The old janitor's closet, lined with mops and buckets, now padded with makeshift foam tiles for sound capture. Elena sat cross-legged in the hallway, a pair of studio headphones wrapped around her curls. She clutched her lyric sheet with both hands. Henry, softly. Don't overthink it, baby girl. Just breathe. Let it ache out. Engineer, into mic. Track 1, rolling. She began to hum. He joined. Their voices folded like thread through fabric, carving warmth into the tiles he'd polished for years. Montage. The school nurse pauses by the door. Overcome. A shy teacher drops a lunch tray just to stay longer. Students lean into lockers, eyes wide, overlaid music. No auto-tune, no beat drop. Just wood, air, and weary lungs finding light again. After the third take, Elena took off her headphones, her eyes watery. Elena. Dad, do you remember the song you used to sing when Mom couldn't sleep? Henry froze, then nodded. Henry clears throat. It's not a song, it's a promise. Let me try. He stepped up. No sheet, no mic, just memory. And the first lyric floated. Close your eyes, my morning star. Micah mouths to the engineer. Capture this, all of it. Henry's voice was different now. Not the gravelly hum of the janitor, but a cracked cathedral bell ringing for one heart only. Henry singing, You don't need stars, my girl. You are the light. Elena leaned her head against the lockers, eyes shut, trembling. And then, a flicker. Flashback sequence. Elena at 4, curled in her mother's arms as rain pattered on a tin roof. Her mother's lips pressed gently to her forehead. This song is your armor, she had whispered. Sing it when the world forgets you. Back in the hallway. The world had remembered, Elena, through tears. That was her voice. Through you. Henry placed a hand on her shoulder, not speaking. Micah, quietly. We need to name this. The track. Something real. Elena didn't hesitate. Elena. Call it May's song. Everyone froze. Even the engineer who hadn't known the story paused his mixing. Micah jotted it down, nodding. Micah. That's the one that goes viral. But not because it's catchy, because it's honest. Outside, the sun cracked through the school blinds, and for the first time in years, it felt like morning. Elena walks to the mic again, this time alone, ready to sing the second verse. The hallway had never felt like a stage. Until now. Henry sat quietly against the mop bucket, listening to his daughter warm up her voice. She no longer trembled. Elena, to Micah. I don't want to just echo them. I want to add something. Micah, encouraging. Then do it. Sing from where it still hurts. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and wrote her own verse. Right there, in the silence, Elena, softly. I chased her scent through open doors, through every song I couldn't score. Micah glanced at the engineer. Micah mouthed. Rolling. She sang like wind carving stone. Gently, but with permanence. Henry could barely hold back tears. In that moment, he wasn't just a janitor. He was the man who'd survived loss and raised a girl brave enough to face it with a mic. As the final note faded into the lockers, even the school bell seemed to wait. Micah, smiling. She wrote that in her bones, not on paper. He turned to his laptop, tapping quickly. Micah. I'm uploading it to a private network. 10 of the best producers I know will wake up to this tonight. Henry. You think they'll care? Micah, without looking up. They'll care because it's real. Not polished, not packaged. Real breaks charts now. Micah hits send, and the screen reads, uploading to producer circle, 97%. The next morning felt ordinary. Kids rushing through the halls, spilled cereal, mismatched socks, and Henry mopping quietly like nothing had changed. But everything had. Micah burst into the supply closet, eyes wide, phone in hand. Micah, panting. 3 replies, 3, and one of them's Travis Wren. Henry blinked. Henry. The one with the Grammys? That Wren? Micah nodded, thumbs moving fast. Micah, reading. He says, who is this girl? I haven't felt a voice crack me open like this in 10 years. Henry slumped onto the bucket lid. Henry, stunned. She was just singing, to feel less alone. Micah. Now the whole world wants to listen. A notification buzzed. Micah's phone lit up again. Micah, reading aloud. Zoom at 3 p.m. today? I want to meet her and whoever raised that kind of voice. Henry looked toward the hallway where Elena had just walked by, books in hand. She hadn't seen the email yet. Still thought no one noticed. Micah grinned. Micah. She's about to find out, and you're going to be sitting right beside her when she does. Henry nodded slowly. Not as a janitor, not as a nobody, as her father. The screen fades out on the Zoom calendar invite loading. Call with Travis Wren. Today, 3:00 p.m. The Zoom camera blinked on. Elena sat nervously, twisting her fingers. Micah stood off screen, giving a thumbs up. Henry? He stood just outside the frame, mop still in hand. Travis Wren, on screen. I've heard thousands of demos. But this one? This one stayed with me. Elena blushed. She hadn't expected to be seen this deeply. Travis, smiling. Before we talk deals, I need to know. Who wrote that second verse? She hesitated. Elena, softly. I did, but I wouldn't have found it if he hadn't. She turned the camera slightly. Henry stepped into frame. Still in his janitor uniform. Still holding the mop. Elena. He's the reason I sing. He raised me when my mother couldn't. Cleaned this school while helping me find my voice. There was a pause. Even through the screen, Travis looked moved. Travis. Sir, you are the story. Henry lowered his head humbly. Travis, I want you both in L.A. Not just her. The world doesn't need more polished artists. It needs more real ones. Elena's eyes filled. Henry didn't speak. He didn't need to, because for the first time, the world had seen him. Henry sets the mop aside. Elena takes his hand. The screen fades out on the Zoom invite being accepted. Flight itinerary to LAX, confirmed.